Hello, my name is Julia Baums, and I'm starting my second semester in the Forensic Mental Health Counseling program, but I'm currently transferring to the Forensic Psychology program. I will begin my presentation by discussing the first course activities assignment. Psychological traits are characteristics that describe ways in which people are different from each other, and I've chosen 5 distinct traits to define myself. I am colorful. Not only do I color code my closets and my planner, and I hate wearing black, I think I stand out in a crowd. I grew up in a town on Long Island where most of the girls were very similar to each other, but I didn't like conforming, which was part of my reason to move to Wisconsin. I love dresses and skirts and would always seem overdressed for high school, but that's how my personality is. I am vivid and distinct and stand out from a crowd. The next trait I would use to describe myself is impulsive, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. One day when I was 17, I decided to join the fire department, not thinking about the commitment and responsibilities it would entail. It can also be good in my last-minute decision to join a student organization at college where I met most of my friends. A third trait I would use to describe myself is punctual. I absolutely hate being late. This is why I couldn't wait to get my driver's license, so I'd be responsible for my own arrival and not have to depend on whoever else was picking me up. This is translated into my work ethics and other professional endeavors. A fourth trait that describes my personality is extroverted, one of the 5 personality traits. I am extremely outgoing and absolutely love talking to strangers. I enjoy meeting new people, which is why I loved waitressing and bartending over the past few years. I was also that little kid that ran up to everyone in the grocery store just to say hi. A last trait I would describe myself as possessing is creative. I've always loved scrapbooking and crafting, and I'm currently making a t-shirt quilt during the winter break. I'm also creative in thinking outside the box in professional and educational settings. As I have mentioned with all 5 traits, I have been colorful, impulsive, punctual, extroverted, and creative throughout most of my whole life. I believe the only difference is the context in which they shine. For example, being punctual to high school parties and extracurriculars has translated to never being late for a meeting or an interview. I agree with Alport that adult personalities do not follow from childhood personalities because many life events affect how people behave. For example, I truly believe I matured and became more responsible when I first lived on my own in college. While the 5 traits I mentioned earlier were all consistent, there are many personality traits I have gained or disposed of throughout my lifetime. With the conclusion of the first course activity, I will now discuss the second assignment, or Course Activities 3. On the revised reducer-augmenter scale, I chose mostly stimulating experiences, indicating that I am a reducer, which makes sense because I do have a lot of ear piercings and am very tolerant to pain. On Ryder's locus of control scale, I was characterized as having an internal locus of control, which was as expected because both of my brothers had a really easy time in school and I had to study a lot harder to do as well. On the happiness questionnaire, I marked that I'm happy 45% of the time, unhappy 15% of the time, and neutral 40% of the time. However, this is due to the fact that I'm currently a full-time student working a full-time job, and I'm very busy and don't get to see my friends as much as I would like. On the life satisfaction scale, I moderately agreed with most of the items, except for the one that stated I've gotten the important things I want in life because I haven't finished my degree program or landed my dream job yet, but soon. On the affect intensity measure questionnaire, I scored an 81, which means I have frequent experiences of extreme emotions, both positive and negative. I hate to admit this, but this is accurate because when I get stressed and I bottle it up, I eventually break down, but when I'm happy, I'm running all over the place. Lastly, I did not agree with the majority of the items on the shyness scale, except for my inability to say no to requests, especially at my new job. However, I don't really think that has much to do with being shy. These assessments were very interesting and provided a fun way to learn about my personality prior to learning about personality psychology. I will now move into the majority of my presentation, which involves an understanding of the personality of Melvin Udell through the 6 domains of personality psychology. I originally diagnosed Melvin with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder because he meets the DSM-5 criteria. OCPD is defined as a pervasive pattern of preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and mental and interpersonal control at the expense of flexibility, openness, and efficiency. Melvin meets at least 4 of the diagnostic criteria, one of which involves reckless money spending. He spends a lot of money to pay for Spencer's medical bills and eats out every single day to keep to his routine. Melvin is also very rigid and stubborn, for he refuses to sit at a different table in Carol's restaurant. He disregards appropriate norms and morals when he constantly degrades the gay couple living in his building. A last example is Melvin's excessive devotion to his book because he tells Simon he works every day, all day, and cannot be disturbed for even the biggest emergencies. I will now use the 6 domains of personality to understand Melvin's personality better and see if he should be diagnosed with a different disorder instead. To begin, I will discuss the dispositional domain, which focuses on the consistent differences between individuals, specifically addressing the 5-factor model personality. On the extroversion scale, Melvin would score low because he is not talkative or social. He does not want to go out dancing with Carol on their road trip. Melvin would also score low on agreeableness because he is obsessed with his daily routine and will not agree to sit at a different table when it is taken. Melvin's conscientious score would be high because his apartment is incredibly tidy and he uses a different bar of soap every time he washes his hands. He also plans out his days meticulously, including his outfits and driving plans. Melvin is definitely not emotionally stable because he often gets agitated and aggressive when he is interrupted from his work. Lastly, Melvin is not open, as evident in his closed-mindedness to gay and African American men that live in his building. Next, I will discuss the biological domain, which emphasizes differences in physical elements of individuals. To do so, I will refer to electrodermal activity. Melvin is very particular about cleanliness in his apartment. He even locks and unlocks the door 5 times for reassurance. When Simon's dog enters his apartment and he is locking his door, Melvin begins to sweat on his forehead, produced by the autonomic nervous system, preparing for fight or flight action. Moving to the interpsychic domain, which focuses on factors in the mind that influence behavior, thoughts, and feelings, I will discuss Melvin's personality through his defense mechanisms used to protect himself from anxiety. Specifically, Melvin exhibits projection, and when Carol asks him if he knows how creepy he can get, he says, "Yes, but I've not gotten personal," implying that she has. The cognitive experimental domain tries to understand experiences from the individual's point of view. Let's discuss learned helplessness, which is when a person feels powerless, usually from persistent failure to succeed. Melvin tells the entire psychologist's office that this is as good as it gets. He tried getting help and it didn't work, so he explains that he's giving up. The social and cultural domain deals with personalities affected through social roles and expectations, as well as relationships with others in our lives. We view Melvin's personality through selection and the people and situations he chooses to encounter and to avoid. He chooses to be with Carol every day for breakfast and eventually chooses to pursue her romantically because she can handle him and knows what to do and say. Lastly, the adjustment domain, which discusses consequences of personality, especially through personality disorders, is what I have previously discussed in diagnosing Melvin with OCPD. Throughout the examination of Melvin's personality and behaviors, I feel that he should still be diagnosed with OCPD, and I also think he should be diagnosed with OCD, a symptom disorder very similar to OCPD. OCD is very impairing and debilitating and is defined as the presence of obsessions, compulsions, or both. Obsessions are thoughts, urges, or images that are characterized as recurrent and intrusive in which the individual attempts to ignore or suppress. Often, they attempt to neutralize such unwanted obsessions with compulsions, which are behaviors or mental acts that are repetitive and meant to reduce anxiety or distress, even though they are not realistically associated with the thoughts they are meant to neutralize. A common obsession involves thoughts about contamination, so individuals might not shake other people's hands. Melvin deals with this obsession by washing his hands with a different bar of soap and avoiding bumping into strangers and even touching the dog with a pair of gloves. He also brings plastic silverware to restaurants. OCD and OCPD are very similar, but OCPD affects relationships more than OCD. This is definitely an issue in Melvin's life because he chooses solitary activities to reduce the anxiety he feels. While Melvin displays some narcissistic traits, such as inflated sense of self and entitlement, this is not enough to diagnose him, especially since they may be caused by his OCD and OCPD diagnoses. With that, I conclude my final Examination.2 presentation and would like to thank Dr. Reister for teaching me about an exciting topic in personality and the rest of the class for engaging in insightful conversations through the discussion board. Thank you. Good night.